The Galactic Council chamber had never been quieter. Ambassador Zeftai of the crystalline hegemony stood frozen at the podium, his translucent form flickering with nervous energy. The holographic display behind him showed the aftermath. Twisted, metal corridors, emergency lighting casting eerie shadows, and the unmistakable signs of what the humans called boarding action. Our esteemed delegates. Zeftai's voice cracked through his vocal synthesizer. What we witnessed 3 cycles ago aboard the pirate vessel Void's Edge has fundamentally changed our understanding of warfare. In the gallery, representatives from 47 species sat in stunned silence. The Theklari delegation, renowned for their military prowess, hadn't spoken since the footage began. Even the warlike Gorthak Empire, whose boarding parties were legendary for their brutality, seemed subdued. Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen of the Eiger Human Expeditionary Force sat quietly in the observer section, her weathered hands folded in her lap. She had tried to warn them. They hadn't listened. It had started as a routine pirate interdiction. The Void's Edge, a heavily armed Zarthan cruiser, had been terrorizing shipping lanes in the outer spiral for months. Its shields were military-grade, its weapons devastating, and its crew of 300 battle-hardened mercenaries from a dozen species had repelled every boarding attempt the Galactic Security Force had mounted. When the human vessel UES Indomitable arrived on scene, the other coalition ships had practically sighed with relief. Finally, proper backup. The humans would contribute their firepower to the siege, and together they would eventually crack the pirate stronghold. Captain Yash Patel of the Indomitable had other ideas. Admiral, we're ready to commence boarding operations, he had transmitted to the coalition flagship. Admiral Ketmore of the GSF had laughed, a sound like grinding glass, through the translator. Captain, the Zarthan hull plating is 30 centimeters of compressed titanium steel composite. Our cutting beams barely scratched it. Your species hasn't even mastered gravity manipulation yet. How exactly do you propose to? The transmission had cut off abruptly. Every sensor in the coalition fleet suddenly focused on the human vessel. What they saw defied comprehension. The Indomitable had launched what appeared to be a small shuttle directly at the pirate ship. No fancy maneuvering, no attempt to find a docking port. The craft simply flew straight at the enemy hull at maximum velocity. "They're going to impact," someone had screamed over the comm. But the shuttle didn't crash. At the last possible second, its nose cone separated to reveal a massive drilling apparatus spinning at impossible speeds. The device punched through the Zarthan hull like it was paper, boring deep into the ship's superstructure before grinding to a halt. What happened next had been captured in perfect detail by the Coalition's combat recorders. From the breach, dozens of figures in sleek black armor had poured into the pirate vessel like a dark tide. But these weren't the lumbering boarding parties the galaxy was used to. Slow-moving troops in bulky environmental suits carefully advancing through corridors while maintaining formation. These humans moved like liquid death. They flowed through the ship's passages in small teams, their movements coordinated with a precision that seemed almost telepathic. When pirates appeared to contest their advance, the humans didn't engage. In the traditional boarding combat, the careful exchanges of fire from behind cover that could last for hours. Instead, they struck with a violence and speed that left the enemy no time to react. Concussion grenades preceded them into contested areas, followed by soldiers who seemed to materialize from smoke and shadow. The humans used the ship's own architecture against its defenders, appearing in ventilation shafts, emerging from service corridors, and somehow always knowing exactly where the enemy would be. But it wasn't just their tactics that had shocked the observers. It was their equipment. The humans had brought tools specifically designed for ship-to-ship combat. Magnetic boots that let them run across walls and ceilings as easily as floors. Compact plasma cutters that could breach internal bulkheads in seconds. Specialized weapons that fired self-guided projectiles designed to ricochets around corners and into hiding spots. Most disturbing of all were their breaching charges, devices that could cut precise holes in walls, creating new passages and flanking routes at will. Watching them work was like seeing the ship's interior rewrite itself. In real time, solid barriers becoming doorways at the humans' whim. The pirates, accustomed to defending fixed positions and known choke points, found themselves fighting an enemy that simply ignored the ship's layout. Corridors that should have been impassable became highways for human assault teams. Secure positions became death traps as the humans attacked from 6 directions simultaneously. The entire boarding action had lasted 14 minutes. When it was over, the Void's edge had been completely secured. 300 pirates, dead or unconscious. 0 human casualties. The implications, Zeftai continued, his voice barely above a whisper, are staggering. For millennia, we have built our void warfare doctrine around the assumption that boarding actions are costly, time-consuming affairs. The attacker always suffers greater losses than the defender. Ship design, fleet tactics, even interstellar law, all based on this fundamental truth. He gestured at the display, which now showed technical schematics of human boarding equipment. The humans have made this truth obsolete. They have turned boarding from a last resort into a first strike capability. Watch this footage again. See how they move, how they think. They don't adapt their tactics to the ship they're boarding. They adapt the ship to their tactics. In the observers section, Admiral Chen allowed herself a small smile. The rest of the galaxy was finally beginning to understand what Earth's military theorists had known for centuries. In close quarters combat, there were no rules. There was only victory or death. The Gorthak delegate, a massive, scarred warrior, whose species had conquered 17 star systems through boarding actions, slowly raised his clawed hand. "Human Admiral," his deep voice rumbled through the chamber's acoustics, "my people wish to request a cultural exchange. We would learn from your warriors." Similar requests began echoing throughout the chamber. The proud Zarthan Confederacy, the militant Shadak clans, even the peaceful Etherian collective who hadn't fought a war in 3 centuries, wanted to understand how the humans had revolutionized void combat in a single afternoon. Admiral Chen stood slowly, her gray uniform immaculate despite her age. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of Earth's long, bloody history of warfare. "Honored delegates, what you witnessed was not innovation, it was application. My species has been perfecting the art of boarding hostile vessels for over 4,000 years. We've done it with wooden ships on ancient oceans, metal vessels in the void of space, and everything in between. The tools change, the principles remain the same." She paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization, speed, violence, and the absolute commitment to victory at any cost. These are not tactics we invented for space combat. These are lessons we learned in the depths of our own world's darkest conflicts. We bring them to the stars not because we are cruel, but because we understand a fundamental truth about warfare that you have forgotten. The chamber was so quiet that the hum of the life support systems seemed deafeningly loud. "The enemy gets a vote," Admiral Chen continued. "But if you move fast enough, hit hard enough, and never give them time to think, sometimes their vote doesn't matter." The silence that followed would be remembered in galactic history as the moment everything changed. The moment the galaxy realized that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was the simple, terrifying fact that they had spent millennia learning how to kill each other in confined spaces, and now they had brought those lessons to the stars.